This is video 39 of 101. This video is about sugar. Today we're going to be talking about something that everybody loves, and that is sugar. And there's a lot of information out there in the media today and health magazines and blogs that talks about sugar and how right now we're kind of demonizing sugar. But I really want to be clear here because sugar is not the devil. We need to separate that there are different kinds of sugar, and there's bad sugars and those are the devil. But then there are good sugars, and those are incredible. And we need to make sure that we are differentiating these two kinds of sugars. We are feeding on the good sugars, and we're just getting rid of the bad ones. So let's talk about what these different kinds of sugars are. These bad sugars are highly processed, highly refined, and added to pretty much everything. And because they're added to pretty much everything, like salad dressings and soups and crackers, pizza doughs, like, why? 20 years ago when we said fat was the devil, we got rid of everything and we made everything fat-free. So what did we do to keep the flavor? We just added sugar back in there. So now there's sugar in everything. Even if it says fat-free, there's sugar in there. And when you ingest this kind of sugar, it makes your body store it as fat. So it's fat-free, but you're still gonna store it as fat. So we are consuming way more sugar than we used to 50 years ago, and we're really feeling the negatives from it. What is good sugar then? Well, let's talk about blood sugar first. Blood sugar is the level of sugar in your blood, essentially. And when we eat foods with sugar in them, the sugar is then processed and it feeds our cells and it feeds our bodies and it gives us energy. However, this can only happen with naturally occurring sugars because naturally occurring sugars have fiber in that whole food. So things like fruits or whole grains or starchy vegetables, these are foods that have sugars in them naturally occurring, but there's a ton of fiber and nutrients and carbohydrates that come with it that is going to make these sugars slow release into our bloodstream at a pace that our bodies are able to manage so that our livers can work and process the sugars and that they can feed our cells, and then we just feel energized and great. That's the kind of sugars that we want. What we don't want is to spike our blood sugar, because if we spike our blood sugar, which is a large rapid increase, this is a level of sugar that our bodies can't process. So this is very taxing to our system and it's an overload. Our bodies don't know how to deal with it. We can feel very, very fatigued as our bodies are handling it. And as well, if this continues to happen, we can develop something called type 2 diabetes. And this is where your body just stops being able to process sugars. It's not a fun disease. It's nothing that I would wish on anybody, and it's completely preventable. This is something that typically only happens in adults because it takes that amount of time for this spike to occur and finally cause harm. However, today we are seeing children with type 2 diabetes, and that is terrible. That means in their extremely short lifetimes, they have had these incredibly massive blood sugar spikes that has caused them to have type 2 diabetes. This is nothing that a child should ever have to deal with. What's the biggest thing that makes us eat sugar? Cravings. We don't really just wake up and eat sugar just as we go. We wake up and we crave sugar, and then we satisfy that craving. It's hard for us to ignore them because our cravings is essentially our body being like, I need this. But sometimes we don't interpret our cravings as the way our body intended them to. And so let's break down a craving for sugar. Because when your body's craving sugar, it wants energy. It wants this sugar that's going to give it energy, but we just interpret that as something sweet. And that is something we can easily grab, like a chocolate bar or candy or ice cream or something that we just know is there and available. That's the kind of sugar that's going to make us feel even worse. And so what our body actually wants is natural sugars. These starches, the fruits, the roots, the vegetables, all that kind of stuff, that's what our body really wants. And so is it even possible to get rid of sugar cravings? Is it possible? Well, I'm going to tell you, yes it is. Because I am the perfect example of someone who is a reformed sugar addict. Yeah, I was terribly addicted to sugar. And just FYI guys, sugar is as addictive as cocaine. Willpower? No, I'm sorry, it's not gonna happen. You're gonna tell cocaine addicts to have willpower? It's not gonna happen. Addiction fucks with your head, alright? It's hard, you can't say no. You can't say no when you're addicted to something. That's the whole point of it, is that no matter how much willpower you have, if you're craving this, and it's an addictive substance, you're going to indulge in it when you have the opportunity, and since it's everywhere, you're definitely gonna have the opportunity. And so, how do we solve this? We get rid of the cravings. How do we get rid of the cravings? We give our bodies these natural sugars before we know we're gonna crave these things. And so that means just waking up and eating fruit, making sure you're getting these great starches into your diet by eating potatoes for dinner. Does this work? I was a huge sugar addict. I would have it all the time. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna stock up on some chocolate bars today so that I can have them for the next month. And then I would go home and eat all of them in one sitting. So as I was getting healthier and I was going vegan, I would have these, you know, periods of time where I was eating super healthy and I was feeling so proud of it. But then I would have a day where maybe I just didn't eat a whole lot. I was craving so much sugar, and then I'd have the opportunity to have sugar. And I remember one time I had a really great week of eating healthy, and I went to the grocery store and they had these salted caramel dark chocolates, which are just like my favorite. Oh my god, they're so good. And I bought the container and I had like almost half of them in that night. And the next morning I woke up and I felt disgusting. Like my throat was clogged with just terrible mucus. It felt so scratchy. My whole head was congested. I was sick for a week. It was the worst time because it wasn't like, oh, it's like a virus and it was like a cold. It was like a hot, congested mess. It was not fun at all. But that didn't deter me from eating sugar. That kind of thing would happen all the time until finally I realized I had something called candida, which is essentially an overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut. It burrows into your intestinal systems and gets into your blood, and it fucks with your head, and it's just all this stuff that's insane. So to get rid of that, you gotta kill off the candida, and that is by starving it, and it feeds off of sugar. And so that means I had to cut out all sugar completely, all the starches, all the fruits, all the processed sugars, all the alcohols, everything. I completely cut it out and I got rid of the candida, which is awesome. But then how am I going to continue not eating sugar? And so I started to find natural sugars. I started to introduce the fruits back into my lifestyle. I started to eat more fruits and I started to eat more starches like potatoes, and I never craved sugar afterwards. When I was full and satisfied, I never craved sugar, and I don't crave sugar anymore when I eat a full, satisfying plant-based diet. When I eat lots of fruits, lots of starches, lots of fruits, I just feel great. I have energy, my body has energy, it doesn't crave sugar. I don't ever have to worry about depriving myself of these sugars that I'm craving because I don't crave them and I don't want them in the first place. The only time I've ever craved sugar in the past 6 months or so is when I didn't eat anything for the day and I was starving and my body was like, yo, we need some energy, come on, what's going on here? All you gotta do is just make sure you're eating enough food, of the right kinds of food, you're eating lots of fruits, lots of starches. Those are the foods that are going to fuel your bodies with these sugars so that we have energy and we don't crave sugar. So final takeaway from here is that we need to be conscious of what kind of sugars we're putting into our bodies. We need to try to completely cut out any of those processed, unrefined, blah 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 sugars. Like there's so many names of these sugars that there's like over 50 names of sugars that are hidden in our products. And they're trying to pass a law right now that is going to be able to add in the nutrition label under the sugars is an added sugar, and so people will know how much sugar was added. And a lot of companies are against this right now because they don't want to tell people how much sugar's in their products because there's a lot, and if people knew, they probably wouldn't eat them anymore. And so I really hope that this bill gets passed so we can know how much sugar is actually in our products. But before that happens, we can just read the labels. And even before that, we can just make sure that we are ingesting the natural fibrous sugars that our body is craving. And then we've got lots of energy and we're not craving sugar and we're feeling great. And we have lots of vitamins and minerals and fibers and carbohydrates and proteins and fats and plant-based foods. That sounds pretty great to me.